Hey, we're finally live. Jeez, that was tricky
There we
today.
go.
That was tricky today. There we go. Oh, we did it. We defeated Mercury retrograde.
In like 5 to 10 minutes.
Yeah. I mean, we were already late. To be truthful, we were already late. Then Mercury retrograde hit us in terms of technology. Oh, I should turn off these notifications on my phone. Hello, people. Hello, welcome. Today we are talking about justice. And what else do we want to talk about today? What did we put in it? Justice and the cultivation of innocence. We had some experiences with that. Oh, and surprise anger. How
Surprise anger.
Surprisingly angry we.
Is it surprising for you?
I guess I'm often surprised by my anger because I often don't know the source of my anger. Because of my personal makeup. There's just a lot of anger that doesn't have real source. So I do often get surprised. Where I'm just like, going through my day, and then it's like, whoa, it's a wave of rage. I was just cleaning some dishes. Yes, absolutely.
Oh, okay.
You don't ever have that? All makes perfect sense to you, doesn't it? Perfectly clear anger every time.
No, that's not true. But
No,
but it's just generally a more surprising emotion.
Well, you were surprised.
I don't get that enraged.
Really, but you said you were surprised by how angry you were about the flight and travel restrictions put in place by Trudeau.
Yeah,
the goon.
Definitely triggered me.
The MK Ultra goon.
I mean, it's valid in a lot of ways, but I know there's something else there for me on a more personal level, because there's so many things to be infuriated, and physically it had a physical response.
Yeah, why? Okay, so out of all the crazy communist lockdown restrictions, why that one? Why did that one peeve you so hard compared to the others?
I know, that's what I mean.
You're still sorting through that.
Waiting to find out. Definitely has something to do with my sacral chakra.
Oh, okay.
Because that's where I've been feeling physically it land all week. So
very
it's like,
interesting.
Okay, so something's going on.
So you've been feeling the anger in your sacral.
And my heart, obviously there's definitely a lot that comes up there.
There may be something similar, because what I've been really drawn to in my meditations is to just be in the space of my sacral chakra, and it was weird. I don't normally get drawn to do that much work there in my meditations. It's like a lot more, but it was kind of like empty. Like it was kind of like unengaged, and yeah, it needed just awareness, just attention.
Yeah. Interesting. There's something there.
But for me, it was just, I don't know. I was really, okay, so we got to give some context here. So for those of you who don't know, the Canadian government just put in place these restrictions on traveling, which basically say that if you travel, not only do you have to get tested to even be able to travel, but when you come home, you are going to be forcefully put in a government facility, at first for 3 days, to see if you're negative on the government COVID test. Then if you test positive, you are put in a different sort of quarantine government facility for 2 weeks against your will, with no ability to leave your room, no choice of food. You have to eat prison food. Really, really scary stuff. Full-blown aggressive communist stuff. And this was after the Trudeau government said, this is conspiracy theory. We have to watch out for disinformation, and we are not building facilities for anything other than voluntary quarantine. And now it's mandatory. People are being kidnapped. People are being abducted.
3 months later.
3 months later, and what was conspiracy theory is government policy. So this is what we're talking about. That finding out how incredibly aggressive they've been. Oh yeah, and also the whole being abducted when you get home, you have to pay for it. You have to pay for the cost of your own abduction by the government, who has hired a private security company to abduct you. So they're not even using public
with horrible
servants.
human rights.
Yes,
violations
that's right. A
and
public
stuff.
security company known to have human rights violation issues in lots of the other contracts that they've had. So, they're really pushing the supervillain thing as far as they can. So, yeah, this was a pretty triggering thing, especially because I was, looking at, possibilities of travel for work and things that literally need to go on for our careers to move forward. But I don't know. I mean, it's all in the stars anyway. The whims of the stars. There is no free will. No, that's not true. But very, very triggering and interesting. I guess the surprise anger for you is, I don't know. It's gonna be a nice puzzle to watch you solve.
Yeah, I mean, I get angry, but it was just more like the very physical response where I was like, that's not just about this situation. So an opportunity for healing, I guess.
Yes, of course.
So, but yeah, it's intense. It doesn't feel good. I could do more movement. I could
More
probably
yoga?
use more movement. Yeah.
Or just walking
Different
outside.
things. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It would help.
Yeah,
But
so
it's
that's,
tough.
I don't know. I definitely been working through a lot of anger. It's not, I
I
don't
know.
find out the source of my anger for a long time sometimes. It's really quite difficult. Especially because I'm very, very, my mind works very, very quickly. And so normally if I can latch onto a bit of information, I can sort things out very fast. My intellect is very good, but it doesn't really apply to a lot of this, where there just isn't any intellectual information to grasp at all. So, I don't know if anyone else has experienced this, but it's the kind of stuff that comes up. I was talking to you about this the other day, where there is no non-attachment. That's not an option.
Yeah.
There is no space for non-attachment with those particular waves of feelings. I don't know, maybe some of that is deep family stuff, maybe it's trauma, maybe it's something that happened to you a couple weeks ago that you just didn't have time to process. I know with kids, this is a big thing. That literally with kids, you often don't have time to do the self-work to process things. And so you might just have something you stuffed away because you had to vacuum and clean the cat boxes.
That's what I was
whatever.
saying to you today, actually. I was like, okay, I just have to deal with that later because something sort of wants to come up and, you let it come up enough, but then, you really can only do so much when you're managing other people's needs too. So
True. Yeah.
yeah, and you have to come back grounded. Can get to that later. Oh yeah, when the kids are asleep, I'll go and deal with
Yeah,
that
exactly.
thing that tried to come up, but it's not always that easy either.
No, because sometimes you don't want to do deep inner work when you're done a grinding day. You want to just lay around and do very little.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's pretty natural. I'm excited to read this. Maybe this has some insight.
I'm definitely
We're going to
excited
pick away at
about
this. Yes, very interesting. This is the Tibetan art of parenting from before conception through early childhood. Yeah. I'm really, really curious about the concepts and traditions from a Tibetan perspective, because Tibetan Buddhism has been such a big part of my life. I know you've connected a lot with Tibetan Buddhism as well. So it was recommended by a researcher that I was looking into for a new series I'm developing on the human family, the family unit as a superorganism, and all the incredible ways that families are connected through time and space and dimension and biology, and it's really quite incredible. And we've seen a lot of that happen with our family.
Yeah, for sure.
And what seems to be the case is that really one of the amazing things that the family can be used for is protecting innocence. It's really I think this is one of the sacred things that the family ideally could become. If we can move into an era where the family isn't constantly being attacked and, the institution of the family isn't so degraded, I think there was an ideal there. And, I was thinking about this a lot in creating this series, you know the meaning of the word kindergarten, right?
No.
Kindergarten is like, it really means like garden for children, garden for innocence. Like that's
Okay.
what that term means. It's from Germany, and being a homeschool family, I've been thinking about that a lot. About the family as a garden for innocence. And what if we culturally upheld the family in that way? What if the family institution became this haven for innocence? So that even even if you're not a homeschool family, even if your children go to school and they come home and they have things, they have to deal with that are difficult, that it's this haven for their innocence to come and process the world, to be with their vulnerability, and to maintain connection with that innocence. Because I think there's an assumption in our society that you have to lose your innocence. I think there's like cultural pressure to lose innocence early. And I think I've said this before in this show, but I remember in high school, there was just literature. The themes in all the literature we were giving was all about loss of innocence. There's this idea that they were just teaching children that this is what teenagers are facing. Teenagers they're struggling with loss of innocence. So we'll just do texts that focus on loss of innocence. But now I'm looking back, I'm like, why was this like pumped so hard? Like, lose your innocence, move from innocence to experience. That was the nice way they framed it, from innocence to experience. But I think it was more insidious, because why would you not want to keep innocence alive and vibrant within you and something you're in touch with? Like, yes, you have to mature and experience and grow. But why do you have to lose innocence to do those things? The term lost is quite devastating. You don't want to lose your innocence. It's like,
yes,
from my understanding, I mean, this is our access to our deepest wisdom.
Yeah.
That soft part of us, that gentle part of us is like an ocean.
I think it's why many of us work to reconnect with that part of ourselves. Because I think, for many, the innocence is already degrading at 4 or 5 years old. So, I think it's about, even as adults now, we're seeking to find that innocence that we just haven't seen in so long.
Yeah.
We kind of have to birth it out again. Like, it needs to be. Yeah, I was thinking about that the other day, sort of, even involved in reparenting after having kids.
How do you define reparenting?
I don't know. It falls under a big umbrella of things. But I think that there's just, it feels like, at least in my experience, that there was a whole nother birth. There were literal births. And then I needed to be reparenting to find my innocence again after that. And obviously the children are great reminders of innocence. But that's how I realized I had lost mine, was in certain moments in parenting with them.
Yes.
And so I would be like, okay, I didn't like what I did there, because that's from my conditioning and it's not working for me, and it's not.
Yes, when you accidentally use social engineering. But that was where
I lost my innocence too, because I was treated in such a way.
Like, for example, what? Can you remember a specific situation with the kids? We were talking the other
day about seeing young kids as being manipulative. And I firmly disagree with that. Like, having a 2-year-old manipulate you. If the 2-year-old is manipulating you, it's because you are manipulating them.
Okay, so there is this. It's true. There's this fundamental.
At that age, they're not thinking that way. They're not. That's not. So that just holding a view of a child at 2 years old as a manipulator, hands down, is causing the first issues with as they're trying to develop their sense of self, like their pre-sense of self-development, like they're just starting in that realm.
You're saying this mistake specifically is one of the things that damages innocence. This idea that very young children are manipulative and adults need to stop them from being manipulative. Yes.
By gaining control.
Okay, so to clarify here, part of what we're talking about is that at this age, when children are 2, when they're toddlers, they don't have the neurological capacity to manipulate in the way that adults believe they are manipulating. This is like a cultural thing, right? There is a cultural idea of the spoiled child, like manipulating the parent to get what they want. This is very, very, it's common. It's common in our cultural notions
and
of
then
child
as a
rearing.
parent, you're taught to not give in.
That's right.
If you
It's
give
like,
in to
don't
the
you
child,
spoil them.
you're a weak parent.
That's right.
And they
That's
will
right.
learn that they can rise over you of some kind.
That's right.
It's just
So
a
the
power
notion is-
struggle. It's a ridiculous power struggle.
Well, it frames them as frames children as like villains, basically, because it means they have like a subplot against you, like a clever subplot to take power away from you. And like, those are all adult mind games. That's not where children are coming from. In their innocence, children are, they're seeking happiness. They're seeking to get what they want. They're trying to figure out boundaries and limits. They're sorting those things out. But they're not trying to undermine the power of adults in that way, unless they're taught that by adults. So this is an interesting thing because this is symbolic for what's going on within everyone, right? We are then manipulative with ourselves, right? We are then untrue to ourselves in moments when there's a part of us that's just trying to get its needs met. And then we might shame that part of us. We might be extra controlling with that part of us. We might shut it down for interfering in our lives. I guess this comes back to that notion of reparenting,
Yeah, and you can look at those, like you said, you can look at those responses even in yourself. And it's like, what do you do? Do you indulge? Do you, restrict yourself in those moments when you're...
Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. For example...
It's all conditioning.
For example, Idris has been extremely resistant to sleep lately. I just had to walk him around in the blistering cold for like 20 minutes to get him to go outside. He was bundled up. I didn't put him in the blistering cold. We together went into the cold, and I put him in a burrito of blankets. But I will say my limit has been pushed. I got really angry with him for not going to sleep the other night. And, that's kind of silly because, like, he's not plotting against me. But it's like you hit a limit. You hit a limit just with, your ability to get rest, your ability to, self-regulate. Like, you hit limits when you have a certain amount of stress in your life. Yeah, I definitely hit a limit with him the other day and got really angry. And, it was okay. But not really a nice way to end the day with him. But this is tough. So children, they do this thing where they push you to these limits, and you really have to, walk this balance of being true to yourself and what you're feeling and what your limits and boundaries are, and trying not to program them with your shit. That's just hard. It's hard. It's really hard.
But part of the programming is good. And so for as much as I look back and get more awareness of my upbringing, which helps me heal, and I also realized that there were things embedded in that were really helpful to who I am today too.
Yeah.
So,
It's
ancestrally true. Or even in the family. So we often talk about, I guess, what we can improve and how things didn't go great. But then